Good afternoon to you faithful students. Thank you for coming. Today marks a major transition in topics in this class. What we have done up to now is we have been looking at technical skills for a food service manager. We have looked at menu planning. We have looked at production systems, all things that would be related to the management of a food service. But today, the transition that we're making is really going more into the actual management processes that a food service manager would be involved in the day-to-day operation of a food service. So it's nice to know one thing about the technical part, but in terms of the real how to make decisions and to communicate and to manage, that's going to be the focus of our attention today and pretty much the rest of this week. What I would like to do to start with is to just take a moment or two and share with you some pictures that were taken within our department that are the result of a major remodeling that was done in our kitchen. First of all, the building that we occupy is an old hospital. Not as old as what you have here, but for us it's old. These are classic. These are good buildings. But the space that we occupy is part of the old kitchen when the hospital operated. And the activities that were involved in this remodel was completely taking everything out of the kitchen. Taking out the ceiling all the way up to the very top. It must have been 5 meters high. It's very, very high. And taking out all the flooring, taking out everything. And what we found was something very interesting, that the floor in this old kitchen, this old hospital, had a dip, and it was about this far across, and it was about that deep. It was a terrible, terrible situation there as far as the flooring was concerned. And so the floor was not level in any way, shape, or form, not only in this dip, but everywhere. And one of the reasons that we found that it was dipped is that, there was a pillar. You know what a pillar is? It's a support for the roof. And what we found was that it went down and was supported by the floor. There was nothing under the floor to support it. And so what was happening, the floor was going like this, and the roof was going like that. So we had some major, major problems. So what had to happen is that we needed to go down to the lower level and put in support so that the whole building would be supported. Otherwise, it would just fall right in and we would not have anything left. Management requires human, technical, and conceptual skills. This is the result of a research project that was done and which was published in 1955, a long time ago. But in this initial research, the researchers found that human, technical, and conceptual skills are what is necessary in order to be an effective manager. The second is that managers perform a variety of roles and functions. Successful managers are both efficient and effective. We talked about that the other day. We've got to do both. Number 3, successful managers are both, no, I said that. Number 4, leadership and management are different. Does that make sense? That leadership and management are different. We're going to spend time on that. What did you do? Thank you very, very much. And then number 5, leadership involves influencing others. We're going to spend a fair amount of time. We're up and going.
My colleague will do another.
But we're...
Okay. 1 minute.
Okay. So these are the areas that we're going to focus on today. So now we can transition back to the department. Now, what happened? Well, what did I do? I just moved it and it went away.
Why did you move this? I think I will stay out.
Is that causing some problem? So the first thing that we're going to talk about is management. One definition of management is that it is a process of integrating resources for accomplishing objectives. Thank you. I'm not going to touch it. Okay, now we're going to go back to the kitchen. The purpose of the kitchen is threefold. 1, to serve as a food science lab, 1, to serve as a basic foods laboratory, and the number 3 area is to serve as a kitchen for quantity food production. So for our class in quantity food production, this is where we have it. So the space that was there was an old classroom to begin with. And that was taken out and expanded considerably. This is an area where demonstrations may be given to students, and so we have tables and chairs for students to sit. And then this is the quantity food production section. And I wanted to spend just a little bit of time in talking about some of the pieces of equipment, but we'll do that as we get a close-up look. You see here the hood that is over the equipment, and so that is where that exhaust air that we were talking about yesterday goes up. And then on the other side of the hood, up in the ceiling, is the place where makeup air is added to replace the air that was taken out by the hood, so that we have a balance of air pressure. This is the area that is used for vegetable preparation, which is adjacent to the cooking area. A broader view of that produce area and workspace. And the individual in the picture is our executive chef, who is a commercial chef, and he has decided that he wanted to become a dietitian. So he's working on that as well as teaching in our program. Then to your left is the production area, and then to the right is our dish area, our dishwasher. Moving just a little bit to the left, you see some of the other components or other equipment that is used. And then this is looking right down the center of the cook's area. And we'll look at it even closer. So there is a grill and a griddle and a steamer and the convection oven. We were talking about that, if I'm remembering correctly. This is the pressureless steamer and the convection oven on the right. This is that column on the left-hand side that we had to move to support the floor. Then this is looking from the table where presentations are made and looking at refrigerators and freezers that are in the room as well. Carts that we use for serving hot and cold foods. Our storeroom. More pictures of our storeroom. But this is the picture that I wanted to stop at for just a moment. We were talking yesterday about steam-jacketed kettles, and there seemed to be some idea that you did not know what a steam-jacketed kettle was. Yes. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Right in the very center is a small steam-jacketed kettle. It has a wheel that can be turned to dump the contents of the steam-jacketed kettle. But the way in which the kettle is made is like a stock pot, but it has a rounded bottom, and there is a space between the bottom of the kettle and the actual outside of it. And through that space flows steam. And in this particular piece of equipment, the steam is manufactured within in the bottom of it. But the steam-jacketed kettle, to me, is a very efficient and effective way to cook because it's easy to clean. It is really good for making soups. It's good for making sauces and gravies and for sautéing vegetables that will go into a meatloaf or some other menu item. But I like it because it is so easy to use and so easy to clean. It doesn't go to the dishwasher to clean because it's permanently put in place. But even there we have, I don't know if you can see above that steam-jacketed kettle, there is a faucet so that water can be put into that steam-jacketed kettle. And we also have a this right here, this is a flexible hose with water, and then that is the water supply as well. So it's easy to fill, it's easy to use, and something that I hope that you'll have an opportunity to use at some point. Okay, I think we've seen that picture, and that's our dishwasher. And another view of our kitchen. So it's not a large kitchen, but we can accommodate about 12 people working in there at a time. Our student load is about 24 to 26, so it will accommodate what we need, I think, pretty well in terms of the processes that go on in there. But it was very interesting being involved in the planning and in the execution of the final plans for construction, to be involved with that. And again, I hope that you have an opportunity to be involved in the process of planning and developing a facility. Now, let's see what happens. Not yet. There we go. Now, Okay, so we had given an introduction. We talked about global understanding. And so we're now here at the definition of management. There are as many definitions of management as the number of times that I have taught management. So this is a new definition of management that I really like. One of the original definitions of management was meeting customer demands at the same time that you're keeping the employees happy and productive. And so this whole process of meeting objectives, which was keeping customers happy, as well as keeping your employees happy. But one of the reasons that I like this definition even better is that it tends to be more of a systems definition of management. Because we're dealing with inputs, it's the process of integrating resources, and that's what systems are. Systems management is that we talked about a week ago Monday. So we're going to integrate those inputs that we are using for the accomplishment of our organizational objectives. So that is an overall conceptual view of what management is. And who is a manager, and at what levels within an organization are we dealing with management? And there are typically three levels. Upper management, this is another term for administration, the individuals who are totally responsible for the operation. There's middle level, which may be a department head level, which you probably will be involved in. And then there is lower level management, which are your supervisors and area coordinators that are going to really be the ones that are getting the job done. All of them exercise the principles of management that we're going to talk about. But I think our focus is more on the middle level of management as far as food service management is concerned. Now, there's another way of looking at the managers, the total quality view of the role of management. And you see that it's completely upside down. And at the bottom is the top management. I like that concept because top management or administration is in a position to provide balance. And we're going to be talking about balance before we end up today. And if we are just resting on one point of this triangle, we really do need some balance. And that's where administration can come into play. Then there's middle management. And again, this is the department head level. And then the supervisors. And in total quality management, we're also including the employees. Is it possible that we could consider the employees as managers? I see some yeses and I see some nos. I'm confused. I like to consider the employees as part of management. This is not a widely held view, but it is a view of quite a number of people. Because employees are responsible for the utilization and management of resources, the inputs. So they really do fit within the total definition of management. But they have to manage themselves, and they have to work together as a member of a team. And that team can be part of management as well. So I think as we look at total quality and total quality management, there is some room for the employees to be involved in the management process. Now, a second aspect of this that's maybe a little bit different is that the customers are listed at the very top of the pyramid, or the base of the pyramid, however you want to look at it. What role do the customers have in total quality management? They are the ones that we want to keep happy. They are the object of our efforts in management.
The feedback from the customers is important.
Yeah, if you don't have the customers, what are you going to do? I mean, you have no reason for existence in that case, indeed. So this is just a different way of looking at it, and when I'm really talking about systems and management, this is the model that I go to, is the upside down triangle, because I think it very clearly shows the importance of the manager in making the customer happy. The manager at any level has at least 3 areas that they need to be concerned about: their authority, their responsibility, and their accountability. Now, authority comes from the delegation. Someone, somewhere, has to delegate the responsibility of management to an individual. Excuse me. And so that is typically done maybe in the hiring process, or it might be done in terms of just sitting down with administration and the department head and saying, you now have the authority to work and to achieve the objectives that we have established. But accompanying authority is responsibility. Responsibility is an obligation that is established to fulfill what we've been asked to do. And so part of what we're doing then as managers is fulfilling our daily routine to achieve our objectives. And whenever you delegate, you are delegating authority. You should delegate responsibility as well. But you also delegate accountability. The manager is accountable to a higher level. Is there any level of management that does not have accountability? What about the president of a company? The administrator of a hospital? Are they free to do anything that they want? Are they accountable to somebody?
Yes.
They certainly are. There is no one that I can think of who is not accountable to someone. Like the president of Romania, is this individual responsible to anybody? To the citizens of the country, indeed. And so there are these levels of authority and responsibility. So remember that you have all 3 of these when you are given the responsibility of management. But even if you delegate further down, you delegate to lower level managers, as you delegate authority and responsibility and accountability, you are not just taking it off of your plate and putting it onto his plate. You still have that responsibility. You still have that authority to act. And you still have that accountability. Even though the supervisor below you has that as well, they are accountable to you. You are accountable to someone else. And so what we see in this relationship is the beginning of an organization chart. Managers play many different roles. There are 3 fundamental roles that they play. That is one of interpersonal role, a informational role, and a decision-making role. And so between today and tomorrow, we're going to look at a lot of these. But the first one, the interpersonal role, is the individual who is at the top level of administration, and at any level that you want to look at it, is going to function as a figurehead. Now, sometimes I think of that word figurehead and I think of someone who is just cast in stone, that they don't do anything. I mean, they may be alive, but they're not really performing. They're just a figurehead, just a placeholder. Well, a top manager is not that kind of a figure. They are a figurehead in that they are representing the organization. So as a director of a food service department, you're going to be a representative to a number of activities where those who are organizing the activity want someone to represent food service, and that's you. Now, as director of nutritional services for 10 years, there were a number of times that I was asked to go to meetings, to go to banquets, to go to other off-campus activities as a representative of my department and our profession. And so you are really looked at when you are doing this as a leader. Now, this is still the same kind of leadership that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but you are the person that is up front and is going to speak for that organization. And so that brings us then to the second area, and that is the informational roles, where you are an official spokesman for the department or for the organization. I think that it's important that as you are fulfilling this role as a spokesman, that you not go beyond the area of your authority and responsibility and your professional competence, that you not begin saying things that you really don't know what you're saying. So I think that is important that we look at. But another aspect of this is that we were talking about monitoring activities yesterday, and we've talked about it several times within the last week. But in the monitoring process, we are looking at what is happening. Are things going according to plan? Is the recipe being followed exactly, or are they going off on another tangent? The final area of management in terms of their role is that of a decision maker or and in this, two good examples, I think, is one, a resource allocator. There are times when individuals within the organization or the department are asking for the same thing. And so, to whom do you give it? You only have one. So to whom are you going to get it? So you have to be an allocator of resources. And to give that resource, whatever it is, a tool, a computer, whatever, to the one who is going to make the most use of it, going to benefit the most from it in terms of the organization. And in this role, you may have to play the role of a negotiator to help two individuals who are in opposition to change that opposition to being able to work together. And I think that is probably one of the most difficult parts of management, is to deal with all of the petty things that happen day in and day out that has to be negotiated between employees, or between supervisors and employees, or between customers and employees. So as we started out this afternoon, we were talking about the various management skills. And these management skills, we'll go and talk about them just a little bit in greater depth. The technical skills. This is a skill that you've had to learn in terms of like working with your hands. It is the actual use of the machinery, or your skill in terms of artistic skill in being able to do something, like to present food in a very artistic and pleasant way where it's going to attract the attention of the customer. Another technical skill would be use of the English language. Now, I'm not talking about you, I'm not talking about me, but whether I majored in English or food systems management or history or whatever, that is a technical skill. I use that as an example, the English, because I'm aware of two major organizations that are headed by individuals who don't have the technical skills for the company that they manage. They just don't. Because both of them are English majors. The first company that I became aware of is the Kellogg Company. You all familiar with that company? Okay. The worldwide president of the Kellogg Company was an English major. Doesn't have anything to do with making cereals or anything along that line. But they have learned the technology that is needed to the degree necessary so that they can be an effective leader. The second is an individual who is the manager of manufacturing for Apple. She is a graduate of Stanford with an English major, but was given the opportunity to manage production for Apple and did a fantastic job. But I think that there is something about working outside of your field, like being an English major, that you have abilities, particularly conceptual skills, that help you at the top level of management. So I have said already once today, I think it is important to read outside of your field. So if you're involved in nutrition, which you are, I think it's very, very good to read about nutrition, but I think it's equally important to read outside of your field of nutrition and looking at other skills, developing technical skills in other areas, as well as developing human skills. Human skills are the ability to work together with people, to form teams, to be able to get individuals to do what needs to be done and to feel happy about it. So the conceptual skill of Apple administrators or Kellogg administrators can be shared with you. You can have those same conceptual skills. And that's why I began this course with the information about the systems approach to management, because that is really developing conceptual skills in your mind. And that, I believe, is going to make you, to help you to be very, very successful in your profession. There are times when leaders or administrators go from one type of an industry to another. And they are successful at that, even though that they don't know the technology. They do know how to deal with people, and they know that conceptual skill of how to put together the various parts to make a whole to achieve the goals that they have, that are given to them. Now, as a manager, at whatever level that you are looking at, you have some responsibilities. And the functions of management are going to include planning and organizing and staffing, directing, controlling, and evaluation. So let's look at those each in turn. So planning activities. What are we involved in terms of planning? First of all, it's essential that we look at it in terms of our goals and objectives. Our purpose in being is to accomplish something that's positive. And that's going to be stated in our goals and in our objectives. So within our food service operation, we have specific goals that we want to accomplish. And one of the things that we could do is to spend a half an hour writing goals and objectives for our food service operation. Can you do that? Do you know what it is that needs to be accomplished within a food service operation? Think in terms of the outputs of the system. Patient feeding, employee feeding, guest feeding, nutritional analysis and nutritional teaching to customers. Those are just a small handful of things that need to be established as far as our goals are concerned. Then associated with these goals, we're going to include standards. To what level of achievement are we going to work? Is it going to be at a very high level? And I hope so. Or are you going to be satisfied with just getting by? I hope not. Another part of the goals and objectives in planning is planning our budget. So 2 days from now, we're going to spend time in planning a budget. And it is this way, in doing a budget, we are actually planning. We're taking our goals and objectives and we are stating them in terms of money. How much is it going to cost us to achieve those goals? That's the process of budgeting. We also need to, as part of our plan, to write policies. Policies are talking about how we do a job. We might have a policy regarding the nutritional level of the menu that we serve. That our menu will contain 14 grams of protein per serving. It will contain no more than 20 grams of fat, or whatever kinds of standards that you came up with on Tuesday. Those are the kinds of things that would be stated in a policy, which we're looking at to make certain that every menu meets the same nutritional goals. We also have procedures. Procedures are ways in which policies are implemented. We spoke yesterday of a cleaning plan. So we could have a policy that says all equipment will be cleaned and sanitized on a daily basis. Just a one-sentence policy. But the next step is going to look at the procedure as to tell our employees how to clean and sanitize that piece of equipment on a daily basis. When it should be done, how it should be done. So that's going to be represented in the procedure. And then the methods are going to be similar in that it might be represented in terms of the standardized recipe. The standardized recipe is a specific method by which a menu item will be made. And so all of these are going to fit together to help us to establish the standards that are necessary in order to achieve the overall goals that we wanted to achieve. So that's planning. The next is organizing. The other day we were talking about purchasing, and one of the first things that came up was putting similar foods together. That was organizing. Exactly that. And It also involves delegating authority and responsibility and coordinating relationships up and down an organizational chart, or to the sides, to the horizontal aspects of the organization. But the definition that I really like of organizing is bringing order out of chaos. So if we have that storeroom that is just a terrible mess, that's chaos, isn't it? And so we need to bring order out of that. And so we do that by sorting, grouping, and going through all of the processes that we did in terms of purchasing, because that is a good example of the organizing process of management. One of the things that happens as a result of organizing typically is the establishment of an organizational chart. You've all seen an organizational chart? How is an organizational chart made? It is looking at the scalar relationships between the top management and the most entry-level employee or position. So we look at the width of it, or the horizontal aspects of it, as well as the vertical aspects. What is an appropriate number of steps between the chief executive officer of an organization like a hospital and the entry-level person? Are there any standards associated with that? There has been an international trend of the last several years to reduce that level between the top level and the bottom. So what a company will do is just wipe out one layer of the organization, terminating those employees. Goodbye, you're gone. It's been nice. There may be an effort to try to incorporate them into other aspects of the organization, but as far as that management level, it's gone. And once the organization settles down, they may go and take out another level. So I'm aware of one company that 10 years ago had 4,000 people who were in some aspect of management in the headquarters office of this organization. And in an interview with the chief executive officer, he says, we've taken it from 10 levels to 5 levels. And as soon as we get that done, we're going to go to 4 levels. I think there's some real benefits in doing that. One is that it helps to push management down to the very lowest level. And management really is involving what is happening right out on the floor, right out in the kitchen. Not what's happening in the office, but what is happening in the kitchen. And so one of the responsibilities that we talk about is management by walking around. It's surprising, as I walk across campus, the people that I interact with and who are also walking, I get more done walking across campus than I do in my office. No lie. Because I can see and meet the people that I need to see. You know, I don't always see them, but it just seems that when I need to see them, there they are. And I'm able to achieve a lot more because I can't find them on the telephone because they're busy. And I can send them an email, but it may be a number of days before I get a response back. And so by running into them in committee meetings and on the sidewalk, we can get things done. Specifically in terms of the organizational chart, we were talking about collapsing the organization. But what about the width of the organization? That's referred to as the span of control. How many people can one person supervise effectively? Any idea? It depends upon the organization. But in a food service operation, I don't think more than 4 or 5 people would be unreasonable. Above that, I don't think that that is appropriate. I think we need to do something in order to change that span of control. But there are organizations that have tremendously wide spans of control. And an example of that is Bank of America. Bank of America is a big multinational bank in the United States and other countries, I'm sure. And at one time, every branch had a vice president. And each of those vice presidents reported directly to the president. So there was a huge span of control, probably to the point where it was ridiculous, not effective, should have been much narrower. And so by that, as it narrows, you've got to increase the vertical level of your organizational chart. So in terms of your responsibility as a manager in a food service, as a director, your responsibility is going to bring that order out of chaos that you may find, to change that organization so it's an effective organization to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. Staffing is the next responsibility of management. Determining the appropriate number of staff necessary to do the job. Tomorrow, we're going to look very specifically at staffing, and I want to help to lead you through several tools that can be used in determining what the staffing levels should be. Do you know what kind of staffing patterns you have in clinical nutrition in hospitals here? How many dietitians are there per, let me say it the other way, how many patients per one dietitian? None? None? None. Okay, that's easy. Now, but we're going to change that, aren't we?
Yes.
Good. The question that I have now is the work that dietitians are doing or will do, how many patients can you see every day? It's going to depend upon the actions that you do for them, the things that you do to help them. But we're going to look at this very, very carefully tomorrow and come up with some, good afternoon. We're going to look at some ways in which we can actually accurately measure the amount of staff needed to do the work that is necessary. But we begin this process by looking at human resource planning. What is our need for staff? Not only in terms of the amount of work that there is and the number of people that it takes to do that work, but planning from the point of view of what is your turnover rate? And what are we going to do to replace those people who have terminated? And what about those individuals that are going to be retiring in the next few years? What can we do to prepare individuals to take the place of those that are retiring so that we have a continual upward mobility within the organizational chart? And so this is going to be reflected in our recruitment and selection of employees or potential employees, and in terms of what we're going to need for the future. So forecasting staffing needs is going to be part of what we are looking at here. The models that we used for forecasting the other day in terms of production planning are not the kind of forecasting models that we're going to use here. The kind of forecasting that we're going to be looking here is looking at averages or our feelings in terms of what employees are going to do in the long term, in terms of are they going to stay with us or are there going to be movement within the organization and where they're going to be moved out. Orientation, training, and development is another responsibility that we have as management. In terms of selecting that employee and then orienting them so that they're understanding all aspects of the job, training them as necessary, and then developing them. Developing them, giving them additional skills so that they can effectively be part of the team. And then we need to do performance evaluation, performance appraisal. Are they doing a good job? Do they need to do an even better job? Or are they at the level that we would expect them to be at this level of their development and within the organization? The next part of management, role of management, is that of directing. Directing the employees or the human resources in the organization to accomplish objectives. And probably one of the more important aspects of this role of directing is creating an environment within the organization to where the individuals are going to be motivated to fulfill the goals of the organization. So when we talk with a prospective employee, someone who is applying for the job, one of the things that I would like to make certain that as I talk with that individual is, what are your goals and how do they relate to the goals of the organization? Is there a great deal of similarity? Are they going like this? And that is going to take some skill, I think, in learning how to interview employees or prospective employees so that you're getting the very best employees possible. The next to the last role of management is that of controlling, ensuring that plans are being followed. Now, if I were to want to go to Bucharest, is there more than one road that would get me there?
Yes.
Yes, there are many ways that I could get there. Which is the best one? I'm driving. So I can use a GPS to find that way, but the weather is going to be a factor, and so what is best one day may not be the best another day. But in terms of controlling, as I go along the road, there are a number of things that I've got to control. First thing I've got to control is that I stay in my lane. If I go too far to the left, danger. If I go too far to the right, danger. So I need to stay right in the middle. That is my standard. That is my goal, to stay in the middle of the road. But I also need, when I get to a town or a village, and the road may turn, but it looks as though the main road continues, but it really goes to the right, I need to be controlling there to make certain that I am still staying on the path that I had predetermined. If not, am I ever going to get to Bucharest? Well, I may end up going to Cluj or somewhere else. I get off the beaten track where I wanted to go. So controlling then is a verb. It's an action that is always being done to make certain that we achieve the predetermined goal that we had set up to begin with. So the standard that we're talking about in terms of control is where we wanted to go. The standard was going to Bucharest. The observing or monitoring is, where are we in the road? And are we following the road numbers that we're supposed to stay on to get to our goal? And so a driver, to be really effective, should always be comparing where they're going with where they are now and taking corrective action. And so that's the last step in the control process. There are many examples of control that occur outside of food service. Within food service, there are a number of control mechanisms, and one of the ones that we could talk about would be the budget. The budget is a plan, as I indicated, stated in terms of money. But each month we get a report from accounting telling us how we have been spending our money. And so what we need to do then is, if we are not following our budget, we need to take corrective action so that we are. That may involve changing the menu. That may be not using so much staff. It may be using more staff. Just whatever is necessary to make certain that we are achieving the goal within the money constraints that we have. Then the last of the process of management is evaluation. Often evaluation is ignored. And in the textbook, it's kind of ignored. It's stated as being something that needs to be done, but there was no discussion about it in the textbook at all. But I would like to have a little bit of discussion now about evaluation. Evaluation is related to control, but is not exactly the same thing. Control tends to be, in my way of thinking, activities associated as we move along from where we are to the point at which we achieve our goals. And so it is a continuum and a continuing process. But once we achieve that goal, the process of evaluation then begins. And we're going to ask questions about how effective was my management, how effective were my employees in terms of meeting our goal. So we're going to really sit down after the fact and sit down and talk about it. That is a process of evaluation. In education, evaluation is the point at which a grade is given. That is evaluation. Control in education is looking at quizzes and participation in classroom activities, etc., that can be changed before the end of the term. But once the end of the term has come, we need to evaluate performance. And so that performance evaluation is going to tell us how effective were we, and what can we do in the future to become even better. So in food service, we have very definite cycles. We have a daily cycle as far as a menu is concerned. We have a monthly cycle as it relates to the budget. We have an annual cycle as it relates to the budget again and for the total budget. And we may even have a cycle as it relates to the menu and the menu cycle. So all of those cycles are going to, when we get to the beginning point again, it's important that we sit down and analyze or evaluate the degree to which we have met the objective and how we can change what we're doing next time to do it even better. And I think that is so important. Let's talk about some other issues in management, and then we'll take a break. Participative management is a term that has been used a fair amount over the last number of years. And it is really going back to what we were talking about in terms of involving the employees in the management. And so participative management says that our work is going to be accomplished by a team, and every member of that team can have input into decisions that are made. So it is the work group that makes the decisions. And so it's a participative process where the employees are helping to make that decision, and that's what happens. There are companies that are owned by the employees, and so the overall organization is managed by the employees. I don't know, I have seen several names of organizations that give the name of the organization and then it will say an employee-owned company. I like to see that because that says that everyone within that organization has something to contribute to the success of that organization. And one of the things that can happen with that is what happens to the profits? The profits are shared with all of the employees. Quality of work life is another term that we see. And here we're concerned about how the employee's life is being affected by the job. Does your job as a student consume all of your time? A lot of times it does, doesn't it? If you're an employee and if your job consumes all of your time, do you have a quality of work life? Do you have time to go to a friend's recital or to a niece or a nephew's activity, where they're in a play or something like that? Or like me, having time to go see grandchildren and participate in their lives. If I don't have that, I really don't have quality of work life. But quality of work life also involves the level of motivation. And I'm just going to say that and drop it because we're going to talk about motivation in just a few minutes. The corporate culture is another thing that is important. Is that a term that you're familiar with, corporate culture? What is there about an organization that would attract people to work there? What is there about the organization in terms of the standards associated with the way that employees dress? How employees work together? Is it a very easy relationship, or is it very stressed? Is there a lot of evidence that there's a lot of infighting within an organization? I have seen academic departments where the faculty are just always at one another. They're just not happy with one another. That's not the kind of corporate culture that I would like to see within my organization. I want to see where employees can work together cooperatively to achieve the goals that we have. Line and staff is a term that is used in terms of the organizational chart. If we were to imagine an organizational chart going from the chief executive officer all the way down to the individual who is doing cleaning, as long as those individuals are contributing to the objectives of the organization in a direct manner, they are referred to as a line position. A staff position is someone who is adjacent to that line that goes from the top to the bottom, and so they are in a supportive role rather than in a direct activity role. So the Human Resource Management Department is a staff position to the entire organization. So as a food service director, you may be relating with the Human Resource Management Department, but they are only advising you and they are not helping you to prepare meals and serve them to patients. Your secretary is in a staff position. So, line and staff within an organization sometimes create some of this dissension within the organization. It doesn't have to be but that's sometimes the source of conflict. And then we've already talked about management by walking around. So probably the first thing that would be important for you as you begin your day in the director of a food service, spend the first little while of your day going and greeting everybody within the kitchen, all of your employees. Talk with them, interrelate with them in some way, and talk about how they're being successful, talk about how they need to improve or things that you can do to help them to do their job better. That's the kinds of things that are going to happen in management by walking around. And it can be a very, very effective way in order to create that corporate culture, to create that motivating atmosphere within your organization that people just really like to be at work. Going to work is a pleasure rather than a drudgery. Hopefully that's going to be the corporate culture within your organization. Let's take a short break.